marketing should be the first thing that you do every day, because life is life and something is going to come up. So what I try to do every day, the 10-5-1. So I send out 10 connection requests on LinkedIn. I try to comment on 5 posts on LinkedIn, and I make 1 post on LinkedIn every workday. What I would say is it took like multiple months of being consistent on it before I started to see any benefit from it. It takes time. You're probably not going to see immediate results. And then there's like those silent lurkers, and those are awesome too, because they'll come out of nowhere and be like, oh, I've been seeing your content. Hey, let's do work together. I'm like, what? This is great.
What is going on, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome back to another exciting and powerful episode of the Creatives Journal podcast. I am your host, Andy of MMG Design, and today we have an incredible episode for you guys. And his guest, his name, rather, is Ezekiel Rochat. Ezekiel is the founder of Rockship Designs, based in Knoxville, Tennessee. He's a designer, developer, Christ follower, husband, and entrepreneur. And he helps consultants, creators, and coaches trade in frustration and confusion for a website that gives them clarity, confidence, and strategic growth. And aside from those things, Ezekiel is just a beautiful man with a beautiful smile and a beautiful personality. And he really helped me elaborate this concept of niche and how you should use it to, determine your strategic business efforts. Ezekiel comes from a background of web design and specifically marketing, where he had some great experiences in a family business that taught him all of the skills he needed to know. And we covered a lot in this episode about developing a niche, about past failures, fulfillment in your own business, and different structures of marketing yourself and how that can be effective no matter what industry you are in. Before we move on and you guys get to know Ezekiel, what a treat. This week's entry into the Creatives Journal Business Owners Reading Database is The Art of Thinking Clearly by Rolf Dobelli. And one actionable quote: "We believe that our introspections are more reliable than those of others, which creates an illusion of superiority. The remedy to this is to be more critical with yourself. Regard internal observations with the same skepticism as claims for some random person. Become your own toughest critic." If you guys want to get a database of the most impactful books online on business, I created a Notion database just for you so that you can become a better business owner and more informed as you go about your business journey. You can check that out in the podcast show notes. Without further ado, please welcome to the Creatives Journal podcast, entry number 48. We're getting close to 50, guys. By the way, if you guys are enjoying the show, please leave a like or review on whichever platform you're listening to. It does a ton, and it really means a lot to me. And creating this content for you guys as I navigate, all the lessons I learned in the creative industry has been such a treat, and I cannot wait to get back to it every single day. But without further ado, please welcome to the Creative Journal podcast by MMG Design, the one, the only, the man with the gorgeous smile, Mr. Ezekiel Rochat.
I was raised homeschooled, and so I would say that my parents did a really good job at kind of introducing different creative outlets. So, for example, my mom pretty early on purchased a pottery kiln, and so we would spend like quite a bit of time building out, different things with clay, and then using glaze, and then she would bake them. And I don't know if baking is the right word, but basically we would do a lot with pottery or different sort of crafts. So as far as a creative outlet, that was pretty common growing up in our household. I wouldn't say that I recognize that as a potential venture for myself growing up. I would have never considered myself a creative person, but I was, into music. I was a musician, and was, I guess, in different creative spaces. I will say that pretty early on, my brother and I would like try little businesses. So the first one I remember is we'd buy bulk candy from like Sam's Club, and then we would sell it at our church on like Wednesday nights and Sunday mornings. We had like this little briefcase that we would bring around, and kids, when they get little money, they definitely want to spend it on candy. So that was the first little like business entrepreneur step that I remember.
Nice.
Later in high school, I started DJing for weddings. And so that also kind of introduced me to like, okay, I can start a business. I can make some money. This is great. And which I still think is an incredible side hustle. If any of you is into music, DJing weddings, you can make like $500 to $1,000 a night. It's great.
Yeah.
And yeah, then I went to college for a brief stint, but at the time I was dating a gal and I really wanted to marry her. And so I said, like, just thinking to myself, I was like, man, it's going to be difficult to marry her if I'm not making any money. Around the same time, my dad offered me a job at his business. And so I decided to drop out of college and join my dad's business as their kind of marketing generalist. So that's where I started like digging my hands into all the different type of marketing tactics. I read a lot of books around marketing. My sister, she owns a graphic design studio in Pittsburgh. And so she was super helpful on the kind of graphic design front. And then we would bring in different, advisors, et cetera, for the business side and the marketing side. So I was able to kind of learn on different fronts.
Nice.
So I ended up working with him for about 5 years, and then started building websites on the side because I managed his site. He had a couple different sites that I was managing, building. So I started building sites for friends. And then one night, I was like, I so distinctly remember this, Andy, but it was like 1 or 2 a.m. and I was building a site for a friend. I was like, man, this is just super fun. I wish I could do this full time. And that was like in July of 2020. And that thought just never left my head after that. And so a month or two goes by and I'm like, man, it's still like really persistent. So I talked to my wife a little bit about it. And then ended up, talking with my dad. He was great. And that's how I started my full-time website design business.
Okay, dude, that's awesome. Yeah, I love that a lot. So you kind of had you kind of like took it on yourself to make that like the main priority. You kind of, I mean, they talk about like all the time, like you say yes to everything like in the beginning and then find the thing that kind of, and through that you find the thing that, lights you up and you want to prioritize more of what your whole day ends up looking like. So it's cool to see that kind of like come to fruition. Like you were able to recognize in the moment what you enjoyed doing and were able to make that the focus. A lot of times I've seen is like, I'm kind of in this season right now is like, you say yes to everything and then you spend so much time doing, I mean, I can only imagine like you're one of the only person that's managing a marketing team, like you end up doing just everything, like email, design, social media, websites, outreach, all this, automation, all this stuff. And it's, you kind of have to like stop and think, okay, what about today? What was it about this week that I actually enjoyed? And like, how did that make me feel? Was it, meeting with these people